Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you're doing great. I'm having a great Friday so far. I've already gotten a bunch done. And hey, today I wanted to talk to you about just this simple concept as I continue to kind of share with you my story and what I've been learning over the last year and a half. And this is going to sound like to some of you, you're going to kind of say, duh. But here's the deal. When you place your value or your self worth in the hands of other people, that always takes you down. But when you let God determine your worth and your value, that always takes you up. It always takes you higher. So I told you a couple days ago that John 10:10 was a big verse for me that kind of kicked off this journey I've been on for the last year and a half. And John 10:10 says that the thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy, but I came to give you life and to give it to you abundantly or super abundantly is really a more literal translation of that. So what that means is Satan, the enemy, comes to kill, steal, and destroy. But Jesus came so that we could have life and have it abundantly. And what kicked this off for me was I had just been through a number of years where just really felt like I was stuck, um, like my best days were behind me. I started struggling with a lot of anxiety, fear, just things that weren't typical of me. Hey, Annalisa, good to see you. Um, and Gosh, and that wouldn't be something that people would look at me and think or even imagine that I struggled with. Um, and I had been through some difficult experiences, some things that really were damaging to me. Maybe somebody else could have gone through those situations and not been as damaged, but for whatever reason, they were very damaging to me. And I think I went into those situations actually walking in my true identity, being who God truly designed me to be, kind of in my sweet spot. And several years of that. But coming out of that on the other side, I feel like I lost something. I lost a part of me. I lost my true identity. And for a number of years, then just struggled with feeling like, man, I'm just off track. And is this ever going to come back? And God, this just can't be the abundant life. So that's really what kicked it off for me. And one of the very first things as I began to say that to God and be truthful with Him, see, we're afraid to be honest with God, but nowhere in the Bible does it tell us not to be honest with God. And if you're a Jesus follower, if you're a Christian, we kind of get taught to be polite with God. And I'm not saying don't be polite, but we tend to go, well, God, this really stinks, but all things work together for good. And in our heart, we don't believe that. In our heart, that's not what we're experiencing. And so here's the deal: God does not respond to lies. He just doesn't respond to them. God doesn't operate in anything except for truth. And so we have to get honest with Him and tell Him, here, God, is what I'm really experiencing. Here is the reality as I see it. Okay? It doesn't mean it's true. It just means this is my reality. This is what I'm experiencing. And so I started to get honest with God and tell Him this cannot be the abundant life. And one of the very first things that God did with me is He kind of told me, Mark, here's one of the problems. You have a jacked up view of authority. And honestly, when He first said that to me, when I first heard Him say that, that was kind of offensive because I've spent a lot of time studying authority. I feel like I've lived my life um, doing my very best to submit to authority. I understand authority structures. I still think those matter. The Bible's pretty clear that we need to respect and submit to our authority, and has a lot to say on that. And so I felt like, wow, how can you say that? I feel like I've studied this, I've taught it, I've lived it. And He said, well, I'm not saying none of that's true. And then what God began to reveal a little bit more of what He meant. And what he meant was that, Mark, you've placed your value in the hands of other people. Now, I didn't struggle with that with just common people that I interacted with. Where I struggled with that was the people who were in authority over me. And really, what it came down to was I found myself in a number of situations as an adult where I began to where I began to try to become who the men in authority over me wanted me to be. Okay. And so what that means is I, in essence, handed over my worth, my value, and my identity to the men who were in authority over me. And while they're in authority over me, they have no right to determine that. And what God was saying was, that's not what authority does. God was telling me, I'm the only one in your life who has authority to determine who you are and what your destiny is. Okay. And so that was really eye opening to me. And I wanted to share this with you. I just read this verse this morning. This is one of the verses that God took me to then as he told me that. It's Proverbs 29, verses 25 and 26. Those two verses say, the fear of people becomes a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord will be set on high. Many people seek the face of a ruler, but it is from the Lord that one receives justice. And man, that verse is so powerful for me. And just understand fear. When it's talking about fear here, it's really talking about where you place your trust, where you place your faith, where you're looking for your worth. And so the Bible tells us, do not fear man, fear me, right? And when we fear man, it always takes us down. When we fear other people and their opinions of us and get our self-worth from them and let them tell us who we are and define our identity, it always is a snare. It always takes us down. But then it says, but whoever trusts in the Lord, in other words, whoever fears the Lord, whoever gives that right to the Lord will be set on high. So fearing man always takes you low, always takes you down. Fearing God always takes you up. And I just wanted to read this to you. This is being pretty vulnerable for me. But here, as I read that verse this morning, then I just said, God, what do you want me to take away from that? And it just started flowing. So I'm just going to read to you what I wrote, kind of my rewrite of what those two verses mean. I said, worrying about what other people think and placing your worth in their hands will always take you down. They don't get to decide who you are, and it's silly and dangerous to give that power to them. God is the only one with that right. He intentionally and purposefully made and designed you to be one of a kind. Your destiny lies in his hands. Your value is determined by him. When you give God the right of determining your value and directing your life toward your ultimate destiny, it always takes you higher. Always. So don't look to your authority or to those you consider to be leaders in your life for value, meaning, purpose, and don't hand your destiny to them. That all comes from God, and he loves you unconditionally and beyond your wildest imagination, so you can trust him. And that's just kind of my takeaway from that. And so that was a real struggle for me. And I'm not at all pointing a finger at the people who have been in authority in my life. I love those people. I value those people. I admire those people. I have nothing bad to say about them. And that wasn't even their intention. But here's the deal. If you're going to let people determine your identity, if you're going to let people determine your worth, if you're going to really believe that other people hold your destiny in their hands, they will. Intentionally or unintentionally, they will. And so you need to understand that only comes from God. God is the only one who has a right to determine who you are. He's the only one who determines your identity, your purpose, your value, and he certainly is the only one who controls your destiny. And so I just want to challenge you to think about that. Go and read those verses today if you want. But that's just a little piece of my story, and we're going to come back and continue to talk about more things that I've been learning. Hey, Dean, good to see you. Y'all have a great Friday. I'll talk to you soon.